Does our political, cultural, social, or economic diversity limit us? Or should it? What in the world could unite a young boy born in 1914 to a son of a yak herder on the Tibetan plateau? Or a beekeeper's son raised in the 30s in Auckland, New Zealand? Or a Japanese woman in the 70s born to a humble family in Fukushima? The distinction of being the first men and women to reach the summit of Mount Everest and literally stand at the top of the world. Why then, in the 21st century, when we are blessed with superior science and technology, when at a click of a button on an app we can procure all our basic necessities of food, clothing, etc., do we struggle with our differences in the form of war and violence? Be it racial tension in the United States in the form of Black Lives Matter, the political war in Russia, or closer to home, the communal riots in Manipur. Ladies and gentlemen, inclusivity, or accepting our differences, is one of the biggest challenges we face as a community today. So was it easier then in the olden days? On the contrary, it used to be much tougher, especially when you look at this incredible achievement of the first people to stand on top of Everest. Tenzing Norgay, the first Sherpa to climb Everest, had a life filled with hardship and strife. He was part of 6 failed expeditions in the form of a porter, a laborer, a kitchen staff, and finally as a high-altitude mountain guide before he and Edmund Hillary were nominated as the backup team to climb Everest. Sir Edmund Hillary, the most distinguished mountaineer from New Zealand, despite that, struggled to be part of the first British expedition, finally earned a place, and then failed in 1951, before finally, in 1953, he and Tenzing Norgay reached the top. Junko Tabai, the first woman to reach the summit of Mount Everest, came from a very poor family in Fukushima. But more than that, you must remember that the Japanese culture, like our own, was very conservative, where the place of a woman was believed to be in the house, looking after the family. Ridiculed constantly for her ambition and aspiration, she strived to overcome social stigma. And finally, in 1970, established the Japanese Women Everest Expedition Team. Do you know that she had to wait for 4 years before she was given permission to climb Everest? Now, these individuals could not have come from more diverse backgrounds with respect to culture, social strata, or financial backing. Now, I know what you're thinking. Is this guy going to convince us to climb Mount Everest? Not at all. Okay, so compared to them, honestly, if you look at our lives today, it's a very comfortable, very controlled world of apps, where instant gratification is the norm, where on most days, junk food or packaged food feeds our body, and OTT platforms feeds our soul for entertainment. Is it a convenient world? Probably yes. But are we happy? 15 years ago, fed up with my corporate world and my corporate life, I decided to quit my job working for Infosys. And along with my best friend from college, Sauraj, we decided to set up our own adventure company with the endeavor of climbing mountains. So what is it about the mountains that excites our imagination and challenges the human spirit? Because more than just a geographical landmass, the mountains represent an idea of an incredible obstacle we want to overcome. Whether professional performance or financial target or a personal milestone, the mountains are used as a powerful metaphor to represent an ambition, or an aspiration. Chances are even you who've never climbed a mountain before would have probably used it in day-to-day conversation. Oh, this academic year feels like a mountain to climb. I've got mountains of homework to do, don't trouble me. Or more romantically, I would move mountains for you. In this way, climbing a mountain actually stimulates our primal instinct of survival and catalyzes that dormant strength in each and every one of us we refer to as the human spirit of adventure. Now, whether you're black, white, brown, blue, rich, poor, young, old, it doesn't matter. Because honestly, the mountains just don't care. All that matters is the fact that you end up striving for climbing an incredible goal and ambition. Now, in 2010, when Sauraj and I decided to climb mountains, it was not just about reaching to the summit, because it's about the feeling of accomplishment that you get, which is truly priceless. And if you do reach the top, the view is fabulous. In 2010, when Sauraj and I set up our adventure company, it was not just about climbing mountains, but it was about experiencing this feeling of accomplishment and sharing it with every single individual who joined us for an expedition or a trek. And as we started making this the focus of our company, we decided to make it as inclusive as possible. And over the years, I've had the opportunity to trek with some amazing people. Now, mind you, these are not the Tenzings or the Tendulkars of the world. These are ordinary people like you and like me who just wanted to do something extraordinary. For instance, the oldest person I have trekked with is 71-year-old Colonel Pannu, who's a grandfather. And he trekked all the way to the Everest base camp in Nepal, reaching a height of 18,000 feet. But the youngest person I've trekked with is 7-year-old Myra from Mumbai, who also trekked to the Everest base camp, and in doing so, broke several records and expectations. The very next year, she and her dad joined us on an expedition to Mount Kilimanjaro, the highest mountain of Africa. We've facilitated treks and adventures for people from diverse backgrounds. In fact, a close friend of mine, Tulsi, was a breast cancer survivor, and despite all her medical conditions, still made it all the way to Everest Base Camp, proving that the mind can truly move mountains. And more recently, Mr. Rajat Mathur, who's a director with Morgan Stanley, decided to do this trek. He's a heart attack survivor. He does these treks with an actual pacemaker in his heart. In fact, his standard joke is, guys, I'm battery operated, so if you're in the mountains, I don't want to run out of charge. The question is, what would compel these people from such diverse backgrounds to leave the comfort of their homes and venture into an extremely uncertain, hostile environment? From my conversations with them, I began to understand and appreciate their perspective. They were tired of their differences being used as labels of limitations, being it, you're too young, you're too old, you're too weak. Constantly told that you can't do this, they were tired and fed up. But the danger is that at some point in time, you may actually start believing it. But by focusing on something that was so much more, so much bigger than they were, they suddenly felt that they could achieve the most. And suddenly the trek didn't just become a physical destination. It became about establishing the will to be able to be more than what they were. In 2018, on the 18th of May, Sauraj and I had the privilege to also stand on top of the world and reach the summit of Mount Everest as part of the Indian contingent. We spent an entire hour looking at the most spectacular view there is on this planet, a distinction shared by 6,000 other people on this planet. However, this came after 2 failed attempts. During our first attempt in 2015, the country of Nepal was struck by a massive earthquake measuring 7.9 on the Richter scale. I don't know whether you guys read about it or heard about it. In fact, the aftershocks were felt even in Delhi and Gurgaon. 9,000 people lost their lives, as per UNICEF. 25,000 people were critically injured, and over 1 lakh people were displaced because they lost their homes. Not too many people know that this same earthquake triggered off a huge avalanche, which killed 22 climbers and injured 55. And guess what? It just so happened that we selected that year to go climb Everest. In fact, our team was hit by this avalanche and buried alive.
The ground is shaking. Shit. Oh.
We survived, and as we dug ourselves out of the snow, we emerged into a scene of complete destruction and devastation. This is a picture of our campsite before the avalanche, and this is a picture of our campsite which was left afterwards. What do you do in a situation like this? You've just survived an earthquake and an avalanche. You've narrowly escaped with your lives. You've lost a lot of money because it costs about 30 lakh rupees per person to attempt climbing Everest. But shouldn't you escape to safety? We decided to stay back. Now I know you're wondering, why would these guys decide to stay back? Because as we walked around the camp, we realized that there was something a lot more important. It was about helping our fellow climbers. The expedition was not about climbing Everest anymore, but assisting in the rescue and relief operations. You must remember that we were actually climbers from different parts of the world, English, French, American, Indian. In fact, some of us could not even talk or communicate with each other because we spoke different languages. But despite our differences, we were united in a common goal. We stayed back and assisted in the rescue operations. Despite extremely hostile conditions, there were several aftershocks as well. And only after all the rescue operations had been performed did we finally go down to safety.
Well, the Indian Air Force is not the only hero in this tragedy, as we bring you the endless stories of courage and determination amidst Nepal's tragedy. We now tell you of 2 young Indian mountaineers from Mumbai who were well on their way to summiting Mount Everest on Saturday, who were nearly killed in the avalanche, lost a lot of their gear, but decided to stay back and pitch in with the rescue effort. Both in their 30s, Samir Patham and Sauraj Jhingan, who run an adventure and expeditions firm. Their tents were located at the mouth of the dreaded Kumbu icefall, a well-known death trap. They survived the avalanche, which destroyed several other camps. After the danger had passed, the 2 men decided to hold strong and provide logistic support for those stranded there until they are able to recover and sustain themselves. And now, with their help, all critical casualties have been safely evacuated from the Everest base camp.
Over the years, thank you, Pam. Over the years of my experience, more than the mountains I've climbed, I fondly remember the people that I've had a chance to meet from different walks of life. As my team and I have facilitated their adventures to different mountains, we've been inspired by their resilience and their determination. I have come to appreciate that in each and every one of us, irrespective of our caste, creed, gender, color of our skin, lies this amazing strength, this superpower, to be able to stand in front of Herculean odds and overcome them with our passion, our hopes, and our dreams. As I conclude today's session, I'd like to leave you with a parting thought. Instead of our differences dividing us, allow our humanity to unite us. Be inspired by your hopes and your dreams. Find your own mountains to climb, whether physical or proverbial. For in our endeavor to reach new heights, you will truly overcome the mountains of the mind. Thank you so very much.